very soon. So there's just a lot of, those are some of the benefits that I see.
Well, just a direct result, we were able to hire more staff. The Regional Arts Council, Vicki came to us, which is a great boon to the development of the area. But obviously just more grant making for the Regional Arts Council. And to be honest, the way the legislative appropriation is kind of either stalled or went the other way, without arts and cultural heritage dollars, to be quite frank, the Regional Arts Councils wouldn't be nearly as effective as they are with arts and cultural heritage funds. So definitely a game changer for that. The more we can diversify our grant programming, as soon as the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund came about, we could do school grant programs just for the schools, which are important to supplement that stuff, general operating capacity building stuff, and also play a leadership role in those arts learning things and try to kind of teach people how to fish type of deal to become better in their capacity as arts organizations and communities.
In fact, that's one thing, I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because we were able to, over the last few years, identify, okay, what are our organizations needing to be able to really engage community in a way as volunteers, but particularly in terms of development. So often the narrative that we were hearing is there's no money in my community, there's no money in my community. And so we were able to help them develop the skills over a year-long series of workshops to help them become better in development, in fund development. And what's really interesting to see that reflected on our matches, or actually in some cases we're seeing decreases in the number of grants organizations are writing because they're raising enough money in their organization. Having been involved with an organization that raised a lot of money from community, I know that those dollars are great, but every dollar also represents an emotional investment on the behalf of that business in the community or individual in the community, in the organization, and more buy-in in the organization, and really deepens the level of community engagement. So that's got another broader effect, so that, it's really interesting, the ripple effect this legacy amendment goes much deeper than just simply giving an organization or artist money.
If you're involved in an arts organization in the region, has there been an impact that has come as a result of the legacy funding to the organization's ability to do its work? Go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's a really good example. And we had the opportunity to work with Sharon Rodney-Bash, who came in and did what is, you're probably familiar with Arts Lab. So she did a mini Arts Lab over the series of a year, over a series of workshops over a year. Again, that's out of that. We identified that one of the pressing needs was the fund development. But what that also did is raise the consciousness of, most of our arts organizations are very small. There's no staff. They are all volunteer driven. They are magnificent in a way to see, for example, the Staples Area Men's Chorus and see this group of men and how they run this organization. It is like clockwork. And but they were looking at how can we operate our board meetings more efficiently? How can we engage people in communities in different ways? How do we do something different than we have? How do we challenge ourselves? All of that came out of them recognizing we need to have some annual retreats. That came out directly out of these workshops. That's really enhanced their capacity, and again, they're doing more. And I just have to give a shout out. That's a really great example of an organization that they have people that come in, they drive like an hour every week for their weekly rehearsals. And that level of investment to be with one another, that sense of community that they've created, but then their consciousness that they know they have to go beyond the community. So they are very conscious of having the things at the Timbers restaurant and Staples and at the school and at different places to make sure that different audiences will participate, but also that they're supporting local businesses as well.
Well, I can just maybe tee up Luann here a little bit. Things that we see in the office and with our arts organizations is really just more of a sense of stability in the region and the arts resources and the resources available not only through our office but others, and really more of a kind of a more confident approach to planning and growth, and maybe more of a willingness to take on more challenging programming that they haven't done in the past. So is that true?
Yes. love calling Vicki and Mark, and they just say, you can do it, you know, they always give me pep talks, and they say, oh, we can do it this way, and if this doesn't work, then we can do it this way. And it's just so encouraging, and I feel like I have a little bit more of a backbone when I call and get some counseling.
For the organizations that I have worked with in different capacities, I'd say I'm a master of small organizations. So they're the ones that are probably, the budget's too low to show up in any capacity at the state arts board level, so they're dependent on their regional arts councils to make change. From 2010 to 2014, I was the director of Visual Arts Minnesota, which is an organization that served directly visual artists. And we were really small, so we didn't have a really great sustainability model ever. That's why it's no longer. However, I learned what a small organization can do, because when they're close to the ground and they see who they are really truly serving and working for, they can be super spot on with their proposals or projects. And this would have been in the Central Minnesota Arts Board region, so this was St. Cloud area. But I was able to really find the artists and hear them out of what they were missing. What's heartbreaking is that now they're missing it because it's not there. Because all these other organizations are too big to really serve those really specific things that we need. And sometimes we just need to get together. And sometimes we just need to have a good showing, and we need support with each other to really grow as artists ourselves. However, that's like kind of the sad part of the story, but at the same time, there were some low capacity moments where basically I'm running an organization by myself, and my report is late. So I'm like, oh man. And I have like Leslie on the phone, I'm like, I'm sorry it's late, you know, and I have to report before I can apply for another grant, because that was the rule back then. And so it still is. Oh, thank you. Just gonna say thank you. No, there was an advantage to waiting, because what it was that I went back to our goals. I went back to the feedback we got from one of our events that we were bringing artists together. And these artists they wrote on big pieces of cardstock what they wanted to do. And I was almost 9 months past that point, and those artists, and this is mostly St. Cloud, but they did what they said they were going to do because they were cheered on along the way. And so I was like, oh, dang, this is the best report I've ever had to write. You know, like, this is great. Because the Seaburger Park project in Seaburger neighborhood in St. Cloud happened. The paper mill project started happening at the time. We didn't do it, but we were kind of in the works of getting, you know, big things to happen. And then there were exhibits that wanted to be happening. There were things that wanted to happen, and it was happening because they had just a little bit of seed money, and that's what it was. It was not more than $5 grand that got these artists together, fed, and working on Post-it notes. That was it. And so that was one thing. And so fast forward now, St. Cloud just maybe a couple of years ago, we started an organization called the Independent Music Collaborative of Central Minnesota, because it was very specific to the Central Minnesota area when it came to what artists need, performing artists. And they needed to collaborate, so we put that in our title. And what happened out of that was some really simple experiments to kind of get engaged with people in different ways to find out what they truly needed so that they can then serve their community better. So the legacy money really has helped with some of those small, it's fertilization, but it's planting the seed to begin with. And so we were able to do some really big things, even at the $60,000 a year or lower budget. So.
We are going to be walking through the Region 5 Creative Amend Report, but I'm going to ask you a really hard question, because you can tell stories in a lot of ways. But I want you to come up with one word that best describes the impact that this funding has had on this region, from your perspective. And you only get one word.
No hyphens. So I'll start it off. I would say amplification. Again. It's taking what's already happening here and putting a megaphone to that so that it can grow.
Super.
Access.
Awesome. Great.
encouragement.
Oh, nice, good.
I'd say ripple.
Community.
Boy, isn't that what everyone hoped for when this passed 10 years ago? Thank you for being here today. We appreciate very much hearing your story.